Let me begin by shifting the way you see this idea of winning the lottery. Because most people, when they hear that phrase, immediately think of numbers, tickets, luck, and chance. They imagine something outside of them, something unpredictable, something reserved for a lucky few. But what if I told you that the real lottery has nothing to do with numbers at all? What if the true prize is something you are carrying within you right now? The real lottery is your state of being. It is the invisible position you occupy within yourself. It is the way you feel about life when no one is watching. It is the quiet assumption you hold about who you are, what is possible for you, and what you believe you deserve. This state is not something the world gives to you. It is something you choose consciously or unconsciously every single day. You see, life does not respond to your wishes. It does not respond to your words alone. It responds to your state. If you live in a state of lack, even your greatest efforts will feel heavy, delayed, and uncertain. But if you live in a state of abundance, something remarkable begins to happen. Things start to move toward you with an ease that cannot be explained by effort alone. Think about it. Two people can take the same actions, put in the same work, and yet receive completely different results. Why? Because one is operating from the state of I must struggle to get, while the other moves from the state of it is already mine. The difference is not in what they do, but in who they are being while they do it. Your state is like a lens. It colors everything you see and everything that comes to you. If your lens is one of doubt, the world will reflect reasons to doubt. If your lens is one of certainty, the world will begin to rearrange itself to match that certainty. This is why some people seem lucky. It is not randomness, it is alignment. They have, knowingly or unknowingly, assumed a state where things work out for them. And here is the part most people miss. You do not need to wait for something external to change your state. You do not need the money first, the opportunity first, or the recognition first. That is the old way of thinking. The truth is, the state comes first, and everything else follows. When you embody the feeling of already being the one who has won, calm, secure, fulfilled, you are no longer chasing the prize. You have become the person for whom the prize is natural. And from that place, your decisions change, your reactions change, your energy changes. You begin to notice different opportunities, meet different people, and take actions that feel effortless rather than forced. This is what it truly means to win the lottery without lifting a finger. It is not about avoiding action, it is about eliminating resistance. It is about stepping into a state where life no longer feels like a constant uphill battle, but rather a natural unfolding of what you have already accepted as yours. So instead of asking, how can I win, begin asking, who am I being? Because the moment you shift your state, you shift your entire experience of reality. And when you truly understand this, you realize you were never waiting for the lottery. The lottery was waiting for you to become it. Now, building upon this understanding of state, we must address a habit that keeps most people trapped in a cycle of frustration, the habit of chasing. From a very early age, you were taught that everything of value is somewhere outside of you, and that you must go out into the world and pursue it with effort, force, and persistence. So you chase success, you chase money, you chase recognition, and in doing so you unknowingly affirm one powerful idea, that what you desire is not yet yours. Every act of chasing carries within it the feeling of not having, and that feeling, no matter how disguised, becomes the very condition that continues to reproduce itself in your life. You may move faster, work harder, try more strategies, but if the state beneath it all is I don't have this yet, then that is the reality that will continue to meet you. This is why so many people feel exhausted. They are not tired from effort alone, they are tired from the resistance created by chasing something they believe is separate from them. There is another way. Instead of chasing, you begin to attract. And attraction is not about sitting idly or hoping something will appear. It is about a shift so subtle yet so powerful that it changes the entire direction of your life. You move from seeking to being, you move from wanting to having, you move from reaching outward to settling inward. Ask yourself, what would it feel like if what you desire were already a part of your life? Not in imagination alone, but in identity. What kind of person would you be if you no longer had to chase success? How would you think? How would you walk? How would you respond to challenges? When you begin to embody that version of yourself, something extraordinary occurs. You are no longer trying to get somewhere. You are expressing someone. And the world responds not to your effort, but to that expression. Opportunities begin to appear in ways you did not plan. Doors open without the strain you once believed was necessary. Conversations align, timing feels precise, and what once seemed distant starts to feel natural. This is not coincidence. It is the reflection of a state that no longer pushes life away by declaring, I need this to be complete. Understand this clearly. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. And when you are in a state of completeness, you no longer repel the very things you desire by chasing them. Even your actions begin to change. You still act, but the quality of your action is different. It is no longer driven by urgency or fear, but by certainty. You are not acting to make something happen. You are acting because it feels like the natural next step of someone who already has it. There is a calmness in it, a quiet confidence that cannot be forced. And this is where effort transforms. What once felt like struggle now feels like flow. What once required constant pushing now unfolds with a sense of ease. Not because you are doing less, but because you are no longer divided within yourself. So release the need to chase. Let go of the belief that what you desire is running from you. It is not hiding, it is not distant, and it is not reserved for someone else. It is waiting for you to stop pursuing it as something outside of you and to claim it as something that is already yours in essence. Because the moment you stop chasing, you make space for everything you once ran after to find its way to you. And in that stillness, attraction begins. Now, as you begin to release the impulse to chase, you come face to face with a deeper truth, one that governs everything you experience, whether you are aware of it or not. It is the quiet power of assumption. You are always assuming something. Even now, beneath your words, beneath your actions, there is a silent knowing about who you are and how life works for you. You may not speak it aloud, but you feel it. And that feeling, sustained over time, hardens into the reality you call your life. If a person assumes that life is difficult, they will find endless evidence to support that belief. If they assume that opportunities are rare, they will overlook the very doors that stand open before them. Not because those doors do not exist, but because their state does not allow them to see or accept them. Assumption is not wishful thinking. It is not pretending or forcing yourself to believe something you secretly doubt. It is the quiet acceptance of something as already true. And once something is accepted within, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it in its own time and way. Consider this carefully. Before anything becomes visible in your world, it must first be established in your inner world. Every experience, every outcome, every circumstance is in some way the outpicturing of an assumption you have entertained long enough for it to take form. This is why effort alone cannot create the life you desire. You can work tirelessly towards something, but if your underlying assumption is this is hard for me, or this may not work, then that uncertainty becomes the soil in which your results grow. And from that soil only more uncertainty can emerge, but when you shift your assumption, everything changes at its root. To assume wealth is not merely to think about money, it is to feel secure now, to move through life with a sense of ease as though you are already supported, to make decisions from a place of sufficiency rather than fear. That is an assumption, and it carries a power far greater than any amount of effort. And here is the subtlety that transforms everything. You do not wait for evidence before you assume. You assume first and then evidence follows. This is where many falter because they look to the world for confirmation before they dare to believe. But the world is only reflecting what has already been accepted within. So you must be willing to stand in an assumption even when the senses deny it. Not with strain or resistance, but with a quiet conviction. You return to it gently, again and again, until it begins to feel natural. And when it feels natural, it no longer feels like an assumption. It feels like truth. As this happens, your reactions begin to change. Situations that once disturbed you lose their power. Delays no longer create doubt. You are no longer shaken by appearances, because you are anchored in something deeper than what is immediately visible. And from this place, life begins to rearrange itself, not through force, but through alignment. People, events, and circumstances move in ways you could not have orchestrated consciously. It feels almost as if the world is cooperating with you, responding to something unseen. But what it is responding to is your assumption, your quiet declaration of what is real for you. So be mindful of what you accept as true, not occasionally, but consistently. Because whatever you hold within yourself as natural, as obvious, as given, that is what you will experience. And when you truly understand this, you no longer wonder if something is possible for you. You decide it is, and allow the world to catch up. For in the end, reality does not shape your assumption. Your assumption shapes reality. And as you begin to understand the power of assumption, another misunderstanding must be gently removed. The belief that effortlessness means inactivity. Many hear the idea of not lifting a finger and imagine a life of passivity, where nothing is done and everything simply appears. But that is not the meaning. Effortlessness is not the absence of action. It is the absence of strain. There is a vast difference between action born from fear and action born from certainty. One feels heavy, urgent, and forced. The other feels natural, almost inevitable, as though it is simply the next step in a sequence that has already been decided within you. When you are not aligned, every action feels like an attempt to fix something. You act in order to get, to prove, to secure. There is a tension beneath it, a subtle pressure that says this must work or something is wrong. And that pressure, though often unseen, creates resistance. It slows things down, complicates outcomes, and leaves you feeling as though you are constantly pushing against life. But when you are aligned with your assumption, when you have accepted within yourself that what you desire is already yours, your relationship with action changes completely. You are no longer acting to create the result. You are acting because the result already exists within you, and your actions are simply expressing that inner reality. This is why aligned action feels different. It does not drain you, it energizes you. It does not confuse you, it clarifies your path. There is a quiet knowing that accompanies it, a sense that you are moving with life rather than against it. You may still take steps, you may still make decisions, speak to people, pursue opportunities, but the spirit in which you do these things is transformed. There is no desperation in it, no sense of chasing or forcing. There is only a calm willingness to follow what feels natural, without overthinking or resistance. And perhaps most importantly, you are no longer attached to every individual outcome, because your certainty is not placed in a single event, it is placed in your state. You know who you are, you know what is yours, and because of that you allow each step to unfold without the need to control every detail. This is what creates the appearance of effortlessness. To the outside observer, it may seem as though things are simply working out for you, as though you are moving through life with ease while others struggle. But what they do not see is the inner shift that has taken place, the release of doubt, the quiet acceptance, the alignment between your inner world and your outer actions. You are no longer divided. You are not thinking one thing, feeling another, and doing something else entirely. There is coherence within you, and when there is coherence, there is power. Even challenges begin to feel different. They are no longer obstacles meant to stop you, but movements within a larger unfolding. You respond to them without panic, without losing your center. And because you remain steady, they pass more quickly, often leading you exactly where you needed to go. So understand this clearly. Effortless does not mean you will never move. It means that when you do move, it will not feel like a struggle. It will feel like a continuation of something that is already complete within you. And when you reach this point, you realize that life is no longer something you must force into place. It becomes something you allow, something you participate in with ease, because you are no longer trying to become you already are. And from that state, every action becomes a quiet confirmation of what you have already claimed as yours. As you begin to move in this alignment, acting without strain and assuming without doubt, you arrive at a realization that explains why some changes seem immediate while others feel delayed. It is not because life is inconsistent, nor because opportunity is unevenly distributed. It is because everything you experience is filtered through one central factor, your identity. You do not receive what you occasionally desire, you consistently receive what you believe yourself to be. This is the quiet foundation beneath all assumption. For it is one thing to assume that something good can happen, and quite another to accept that it belongs to you, that it is natural for you, that it fits the person you understand yourself to be. If there is a gap between your desire and your identity, that gap will always be felt as distance, delay, or difficulty. A person may say they want abundance, but if they still see themselves as someone who struggles, someone who is overlooked, someone who must fight for every gain, then that identity will continue to express itself, not as punishment, but as consistency. Life is always faithful to who you believe you are. So the question is no longer what do I want, but who am I being? Because your identity is not shaped in moments of excitement or temporary belief. It is formed in what feels normal to you, what feels familiar, what feels like this is just how my life is. And whatever feels normal, you will return to again and again, until it becomes your experience. This is why people can have moments of confidence, moments of vision, even moments of success, and yet find themselves slipping back into old patterns. They have touched a new state, but they have not yet made it their identity. They visit it, but they do not live there. To change your life in a lasting way, you must be willing to change what feels natural to you. You must begin to see yourself not as someone trying to become successful, but as someone for whom success is already an ordinary part of life. Not as someone hoping for luck, but as someone for whom things tend to work out. And this is not done through force. You do not fight your old identity, you gently outgrow it. You introduce a new way of seeing yourself and return to it so often, so consistently, that it begins to feel more real than the old one. You ask yourself, how would I think if I were already that person? How would I respond? What would I no longer tolerate? What would I naturally expect? And then in small and quiet ways you begin to live from those answers. At first it may feel unfamiliar, but unfamiliar does not mean untrue. It simply means new. And if you persist without strain, that new identity begins to settle. It becomes less like an act and more like a recognition. As this happens, your world begins to reflect the shift. Not because you forced anything to change, but because you are no longer the same person interacting with it. You notice different things. You accept different outcomes. You carry yourself differently. And in doing so, you invite different responses from life itself. And soon what once felt extraordinary begins to feel normal. What once seemed out of reach becomes part of your everyday experience. This is how identity shapes reality, not in sudden leaps alone, but in a steady redefinition of what you accept as me. So do not focus only on what you wish to have. Give your attention to who you are willing to be, because once that is decided, everything else begins to arrange itself around it. For in truth you do not rise to meet your desires, you fall into alignment with your identity. And now you come to what most overlook. Not because it is hidden, but because it is too subtle for a mind that has been trained to value only what can be seen. The world celebrates visible effort. It applauds action, movement, and results. But it rarely acknowledges the deeper activity that gives rise to all of it, the invisible work within. This is the work that requires no audience, no recognition, and no external validation. It is the quiet discipline of observing your thoughts, of guiding your feelings, of choosing your state regardless of appearances. It is here, in this unseen space, that everything is decided long before it takes form in your outer world. You may spend hours trying to change your circumstances directly, attempting to rearrange people, situations, and outcomes. But if the inner conversation remains unchanged, if the underlying state remains the same, then whatever you build will eventually reflect that same pattern. The outer world is not the cause, it is the echo. So the real work is not out there, it is within you. It is in the moment when doubt appears, and instead of following it, you gently return to your chosen assumption. It is in the moment when fear arises, and instead of reacting, you remain anchored in the identity you have accepted. It is in the quiet decision to feel as though it is already done, even when there is no immediate evidence to support it. This requires awareness, not force, not struggle, but awareness. Because without awareness, you fall back into old patterns automatically. Thoughts repeat themselves, emotions follow familiar paths, and before you realize it, you are once again living from a state you no longer wish to occupy. But with awareness, something shifts. You begin to notice the moment a limiting belief tries to take hold. You catch the feeling before it deepens, and in that space you have a choice. Not a dramatic one, not a difficult one, just a quiet redirection. You return to the state you have chosen, again and again, without frustration, without impatience. You do not demand immediate results because you understand that the inner shift is the result. Everything else is simply a reflection that will follow in its own time. And as you persist in this unseen work, something remarkable begins to happen. The effort you once placed on the outer world starts to dissolve. You no longer feel the need to control every detail, to force outcomes, or to constantly check for progress. There is a growing sense of trust, not in chance, but in the process you have come to understand. Your thoughts become more aligned, your emotions more stable, your reactions more deliberate. And because of this inner coherence, your outer world begins to mirror that same order. Situations resolve more easily. Opportunities appear more naturally. What once felt complicated becomes simple. Yet to others, it may seem as though nothing has changed in your effort. They may not see the hours you have spent refining your inner state, the moments you chose faith over doubt, the times you remained steady when it would have been easier to fall back. But you will know. And more importantly, your life will reveal it. This is why the invisible work is the real work, because it is the only place where true change can occur. Everything else is secondary, a shadow cast by the inner light you either cultivate or neglect. So do not underestimate the power of what cannot be seen. Do not measure your progress only by external signs. Stay faithful to the inner transformation, for it is the source of all that you experience. And when you truly commit to this unseen discipline, you will find that life begins to move with a quiet obedience to your state. For what is done within will always, without exception, be expressed without.